Hey, what's going on, everyone? I just got to see Game of Thrones: The Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It is very detached from the rest of Game of Thrones in a lot of ways, even though it does take place in the same universe. This is really just following a hedge knight. He's not really a part of any of the big wigs. He doesn't work for royalty or anything like that, although it seems like he might want to. This knight's name is Sir Duncan the Tall, and we're following his journey with this young boy he meets called Egg. He is still trying to just navigate his way through the universe of Game of Thrones after losing his mentor and trying to figure all that out and find his way on his own. And it's really fascinating to watch because this show is toned so differently than everything else in Game of Thrones, with the exception of a couple episodes that say like 4 or 5 get very Game of Thrones, but it really never loses the new flavor of show that this is. And this one's actually quite funny by comparison to other Game of Thrones shows as well. What I really enjoyed, and I think what really made this one feel different, is the fact that our main character, Sir Duncan the Tall, he is not anything like other Game of Thrones characters that we follow at the forefront. This guy is so likable. He's just a good guy, right? And you root for him the entire time. Usually with Game of Thrones properties, we are rooting for despicable characters, but this guy you root for because he's good at heart. He wants to do good things. He wants to help others, and you get that sense very early on in the show, and I think that really helps this show move quickly and pace quickly. What I like with a show like this is so focused on one particular character. It's shorter than other Game of Thrones shows. It's 6 episodes long, and it's also like half-hour episodes. You don't have to put a lot of time investing in this, but you will not want to stop watching it, I promise you. Like from the first, maybe even second episode, you're pretty hooked. I mean, it's really good that way. It's well written, and you just really can't wait to see what happens next from episode to episode. And I think that this is like really the fresh flavor of Game of Thrones that we needed as audience members, as opposed to something like House of the Dragon, which is a show I really quite enjoy, don't get me wrong, but that show is really there to try to fill the void that was Game of Thrones, right? Like Game of Thrones was a show that people watched for a long time, and you really don't have another one like it, so that's why House of the Dragon came into play. It's toned very much like Game of Thrones, and it's layered like Game of Thrones. It has a lot of different characters like Game of Thrones, as opposed to this is one main character we're mostly focused on for the entirety of it, and I think that is so refreshing, and that's really the show that we needed, I feel like. And this is really the most excited I've been about the Game of Thrones franchise in a very long time. I really loved this show, guys. I mean, if you guys have not seen this, you really should check it out. And you don't have to be a Game of Thrones fan, I don't think, anyway. It's really hard to say having been a Game of Thrones fan, because I did feel a little bit more rewarded having seen the other things. But in this case, it's really all about Sir Duncan the Tall, what happens to this guy, and I think that most audiences are going to connect to him. And if you're somebody who didn't watch Game of Thrones because you don't want to put the time and investment into following all these different characters and learning all these different things, this is a show for you, honestly, because it's a lot less layered than all these other Game of Thrones projects, and I think you guys could really enjoy that. And this could, honestly, because you like this and you like the world of Westeros, you might want to dive into the other things if you haven't seen them. So this actually could be a very good Game of Thrones entry point for those people who thought that just watching an entire thing of Game of Thrones would be too much on them. So having something a little bit more simple might make people say, hey, you know what, I want to spend more time in Westeros. In that way, I think that this series might be a better entryway into the Game of Thrones world than the show Game of Thrones was. None of this really works without Peter Claffey, who plays Sir Duncan, and Dexter Ansel, who plays Egg. I mean, if those two actors don't have the chemistry they have on screen to carry this show forward, I don't think it really works at all, and thank God they did. And one of the things with the main Game of Thrones series that this doesn't really have is that the main Game of Thrones series could always kind of throw away an extra plot in there. If on a certain episode a character wasn't in it as much that you may like, they'll throw in another plot to try to make up for that, as opposed to this doesn't really have that luxury, because we are just following these main 2 characters for the most part, so they honestly have to do the heavy lifting all on their own. And what this show lacks in darkness and complexity, it does really make up for in lightheartedness and warmth. It's really a nice balance, and that's why I think that this one is so successful at doing what it does. I just really really thought that this is the show we needed right now. It's kind of a feel-good show by the end of it. Like, I actually walked out happy, which isn't supposed to be how I'm feeling at the end of Game of Thrones, but that's okay, because I really just want to see where these characters go, and I'm invested enough. And sometimes it's just nice to follow good people. It kind of reminds me of Rocky a little bit in that way. Like, Rocky's like just like a good dude, and you root for him because of that. Like, even if you don't like boxing or not, let's be honest, like, Rocky works because you like the guy. Sir Duncan operates in a very similar way, where you just really like him, so you root for him throughout Westeros. You don't necessarily need to understand the mechanics of Westeros, so you don't really have to be a massive Game of Thrones fan to understand this show and its story. I mean, I think you'll be just fine with what you get. I actually think that this show is near perfect. I honestly did not have a ton of problems with it. Again, it does lack some of the complexities and some of the darkness that Game of Thrones had. Although it does get very dark, it still has a lot of very Game of Thronesy things in there. It's a very adult show. Don't take me the wrong way here, but I think some fans will be missing that, and I did a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to you, but for the most part, for what they're going for, they executed on perfectly, and I think that most people will be very satisfied by the end. This is based on a short story called The Hedge Knight, I believe, by George R.R. Martin. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I don't read the books, I'll be honest with you, but this is making me actually want to read that, honestly, because I love this character as much as I do. Anyway, guys, have you watched Night of the Seven Kingdoms? What did you think of it? Are you interested in watching this one? Why or why not? I would really love to hear your thoughts on it, but before I get out of here, if you like what you saw here today, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave some feedback in the comment section, share with your friends, hit the bell for notifications. It's always much appreciated. I do apologize for getting to this one quite late. I was actually going to release this review last weekend, but I did get caught up playing Resident Evil Requiem. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just genuinely wanted to shout this game out. It is so good that it actually delayed my review for an entire week. So if that tells you anything, I do think you guys should check that game out if you're Resident Evil fans, or if you're just looking for a new survival horror experience in general. Definitely play this one. It was really worth the time. So thank you guys for joining. My name is Dom. I will talk to you guys later.